All right, so let's take a look today. We're going to talk about Chokepoint, and has Chokepoint actually got an ending to it? We'll talk a lot about where regulation planning is going, a lot of details around who's talking and why, and then also take a look at what this might mean for you and me, especially here in the United States, but also globally. So there's a lot of implications that could really play into this from a crypto asset standpoint. So we're going to dive in deep. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. I want to thank our sponsor today, and that is Bitcoin 2023. You've got to get in there and join. Come down here to Miami, where they're holding the conference between the 18th and 20th of this month. So it's just around the corner here. We have a special cool offering. If you are part of the Diamond Circle, you will get a chance at winning one of two tickets that we're going to be giving away. And these are expensive tickets, so about $1,000 each. So make sure and grab it. Get in on the Diamond Circle. It's very simple. We'll leave a link down below. That's where we'll be selecting the winners this week. We'll probably announce it Thursday or Friday on air of who won. But check it out down below. You did get a discount either way, so you can catch the show here. And of course, maybe you get a chance to meet up with us. Let's go over to this first story right here. JPMorgan to take over First Republic. And I think this was kind of anticipated in the sense that, JPMorgan, I think, is in a position where they may want to go ahead and just start acquiring a lot of different banks. All depositors of First Republic Bank will become depositors of JPMorgan Chase. National Association will have full access to all of their deposits. So this is good for, I guess, the banking industry, but it does create something that you and I talk about all the time, and that is centralization of the banking system. Again, do we boil down to 5 or 6 banks within the next year and what that might look like? Do we have that kind of problem? Because if we are at that space, then it gets into one scenario, and that is at some point where the government could simply say, we're going to go to a digital dollar. These are the 5 approved banks. If you don't have money in there, everything's off. That kind of scenario. I know that's kind of dystopian, but it definitely is one to be thinking about. Thinking of dystopian feats, let's talk about the FOMC. FOMC coming up right here, May 2nd and 3rd, just around the corner here for the meeting. Most likely going to get a 25, but I think a lot of what we're seeing in the markets today, a little bit of softness, anticipating a little bit of move from the Fed around continued interest rate raises. And this is, again, something that we'll continue to see as far as a push. The real question is whether or not the jobs numbers and some of the lagging indicators, including commercial real estate, and general real estate, will become a factor in lowering inflation as we continue to go into the summer months. A lot pending in this summer right now. There's going to be a lot coming in on this. Big news coming in for the week was that Signature Bank, this is kind of interesting too. Signature Bank failed because of mismanagement contagion. This is a report coming in from the FDIC. And part of what they said is that it fell apart because it was mismanaged by officers and contagion effects. Obviously, the wind down of what happened over at Silicon Valley, that had that contagion effect flowing into this. And they also, the Signature Bank, heavily relied on uninsured deposits, didn't have strong liquidity. These are bad moves from a lot of these scenarios. And one thing that they did say within this report, the FDIC report, is this right here. And that is that Signature Bank failed to understand the risk of its association and reliance on the crypto industry deposits or its vulnerability to contagion from the crypto industry. Now, it's not that it was because of that. It was just saying this is one of the, the spikes on the stool that essentially caved out from underneath them and caused a lot of what we saw with the scenario playing out in Signature. Again, this goes back into the whole choke point issue, which Signature was one of the last banks out there to be able to offer onboarding points for a lot of these crypto companies here in the US, which is what we're starting to continue to see as a challenge. Now, with that being said, there's still quite a bit of activity going in terms of, and we've covered it here on the show quite a bit last week, everything from the Financial Committee to the Agricultural Committee, all of which are coming in from the House that potentially could boil into a really interesting scenario playing forward. Let me go to a tweet here. This, of course, is Gary Gensler. Intermediaries for investment contracts are required to comply with securities law. So they are not really wavering too much from their standpoint. I think this is where it's going to get interesting because of how this plays in further into it. If you look a little bit further into the scenarios right there, just the laws on governing the securities industry and what they're trying to do with it. I think this plays out into a couple of points overall of the fact that the SEC, whether or not we get regulation coming in from DC and how that aligns with the SEC or the CFTC, all the regulatory boards that would play into who's going to control most of this activity within the space. There's a lot also that I think bull around the aspect of stablecoins themselves. So this was some conferences, some conference coverage from Consensus. This is Eric Voorhees. He's been on our show before. He has an interesting statement here that I want you to listen to, and it's intriguing. If you're very pro crypto, then you'll get it, but if you're not, then you're going to start to ask a lot of questions. But listen to what they had to say.
So we can't have the regulation conversation without talking about tokens, right? And Shapeshift offers yield on its native token, Fox. I think a lot of DAOs that are trying to set up now are getting advice from their legal teams about tokens. They're being told, just hold off if you're in the US on launching a token. Do you think the token puts your community at risk at all?
Nope. I've had, let's say, relations with the SEC since 2012, and I've been very ready for them to scrutinize everything that we have done. Like, I lived through the ICO bubble. We have been very careful with how we created that token, how we structured it. We never sold it. And to the degree the SEC wants to come and give us hell for it, they're welcome to do so, because we're waiting.
Okay. So I covered the G20 a little bit, the G7. We're just looking at how the Financial Stability Board, the IMF, have been roped in to come up with a paper that is going to come up with crypto rules for the country, for the world, effectively. And you say we don't need rules. This is about making sure that we find another way to trust each other, which is decentralized, of course. So here's the point: rules are coming. There's no stopping that.
We have a lot of regulations already. It is a myth that this industry is unregulated.
No, what I mean is like global rules that 20 different countries, maybe more, agree on, right? And because it's cross-border, so they believe that just for rules to be effective, you need to have cross-border cooperation. And if rules are coming, how can the industry, someone like you, take the position that, well, we actually don't want any of those rules? Because you've got to actually prepare for those rules coming in, and how you're going to retrofit your own industry to those rules.
I guess I see the world of DeFi and crypto as transcendent of those rules. So again, those rules already exist, right? Every country in the world regulates finance heavily, and by default regulates cryptocurrency heavily. So it's not like there's no rules and the rules might come in the future. They're already here, and there are many of them. And it does not matter how many regulations come down from politicians. A Uniswap smart contract does not abide by them. So on some level, you can just ignore them and interact with mathematics, just like I can interact with language without anyone's permission.
But what if they come knocking on your door then?
Alleging what? Alleging that I'm interacting with speech? Go for it. Let's have that fight.
Okay, let's have that.
All right, so as you can see here, Voorhees is pretty outspoken on the position around how decentralization and the base layer really makes a very compelling argument if there is no really one in control. Now, granted, there's been a lot of scams out there that do fall under securities guidelines, but they've done it because they set that up separately. And I think that's the thing that's playing out here for sure. Let me play this next clip for you.
Are there a lot of cases that you would potentially go after if you had more resources? Is it systemic?
There's so much fraud in this space, to be honest. When you think about sort of wash trades and rug pulls, there's these romance scams and all of these other things and Ponzi schemes. And so you want to be able to protect everyone. We just do not have the resources. And remember, this is part of the problem, that we have enforcement authority over Bitcoin and other non-security spot markets. We do not have regulatory authority, so we can't put the rules in to kind of protect people. We also don't have visibility into what's happening.
Commissioner, last question for you, and then we have to wrap. What's the mood in Washington just in general with crypto at the moment, regulation regarding crypto? Just what's the mood?
Yeah, the mood is trying to get it right. I think there's really a big push, a bipartisan support for trying to get, a regulatory framework in place. But the mood is also that industry has to step up too.
Awesome, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
All right, so this is good coming from the CFTC. Industry's going to step up. Rules are going to be aligned. The question is, again, is going to be weighing this out. And I think that's going to be the factor that we are going to see in DC is that who is really getting the benefit of this. And I don't want to necessarily say the benefit of political benefit, but in essence, the controlling benefit. That's going to be one of the bigger factors here. This was Caitlin Long. I think this is the one with Caitlin. Yeah, this is Caitlin Long talking about Custodia Bank, but also how this plays out as well. Listen to what she had to say.
So something very unusual happened.
Yeah, so she actually has spoken about this on CoinDesk before, and you've actually said this was a coordinated effort against you.
Yes,
right?
That's correct.
Yeah, now, so just let me understand this, because there's something known as Operation Chokepoint 2.0, which happened about a few weeks, months back later.
It actually, I think, started with us.
That's the question I was going to ask you, actually.
Yes.
Did it actually start with you and not get recognized as Operation Chokepoint 2.0?
It's so interesting, and I did do CoinDesk TV, and your colleagues were asking, how do you know it was coordinated?
Yeah.
Well, now it's crystal clear because others have had the same thing happen, but somebody leaked it to the press that we had been asked to withdraw our application. So suddenly, before we were turned down, we were getting phone calls from the media saying, your Fed application is going to be voted down. The press was telling us this, and we had not been told this. Okay, and so the Fed gave us, this is now all public information, gave us 48 hours to make a decision whether to withdraw our application. And in the meantime,
have you said this before ever? Have you said this out before?
Well, it's in our lawsuit, but but in the meantime, we were dealing with a deluge of press people telling us we were going to be voted down and wanting a comment from us, but we weren't told that, and we had a decision to make whether to withdraw our application. So here's the punchline. We sent the letter to the Fed declining to withdraw our application, and within hours, a reporter was reading it back to us.
This is unprecedented.
So let's get to that, because that to me is one of the bigger factors here. It starts to put a lot of people into a position where you think, okay, there's really nefarious actions going on when you've got the press, the controlling aspect of what's happening within the press, getting this kind of inside data and information from private transactions that typically these kind of things just don't get out until it's post. And I would agree with Caitlin. I think this is one of those things that was a bit of a hit piece on Republic Bank. She goes on in this interview to cover this further, and I'll talk to you about why this is important here in a second. Listen to our second clip.
Then Wyoming and Nebraska did the special purpose charters for digital assets, but they're extensible, they're usable for more than just the digital asset industry.
Yeah.
So now the Fed slammed the door on all uninsured bank charters, and I wrote an article last week explaining that essentially means the Fed just voted itself a veto over state chartering authority, which has never existed in the 150-year history of the dual banking system in the United States. You didn't ever have to get federal permission, and FDIC insurance and Fed master accounts were automatic for state chartered banks historically. It's only been in recent years with Operation Chokepoint that the FDIC started pushing back, and then the Fed with the cannabis bank with the TNB in Connecticut started pushing back. Right. So this is an issue that's been bubbling up.
Okay.
This whole federal power grab against the states, and the states are pushing back, but the states are going to have the last word. I'll leave it there.
You're making a
Okay, so what she just said to me is probably one of the strongest points in the regulatory framework of crypto. And here's the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand, and that is that we're a republic. The Republic of the United States is that, and that's the idea, is that the idea behind a republic is to avoid democracy, which is how our current government would like to frame our government here, is that this is a democracy. It is not a democracy, it's a republic. The republic protects against this kind of authoritarian nature, which is the scenario that played out in the 1700s when we separated from Great Britain. So this is the problem that you have of where people just don't understand. The power of the states are real, and the state banking charters, state laws, this already exists in almost every walk of life, in almost every governing aspect of its people. This is one of the things that I think will play out in a very interesting way that could start to put a lot more pressure on what's happening at the FDIC, and of course what we could be seeing and happening even at the federal mandate level around crypto. Further into this, scams cost crypto investors millions in an April 2023 report. Millions! 74 million lost to crypto exploits. This is amazing. There's only one problem with this. If you consider the amount of securities fraud, this is a book also listed on the New York Times. Two co-authors estimated about 40% of companies are committing accounting violations, that 10% are committing what is considered securities fraud, destroying about 1.6% of equity value each year. That's about $830 billion in 2021. So people, this is all a facade. It is exactly the way they want you to believe, and that's overblowing what is essentially a gnat on the butt of an elephant. And the size of this market in comparison and what we really can be. The reason that all of this is happening is because of the fear of what this might do to the monetary systems around the world. The question I have, and I think that will start to play out here, is what does this mean for not only the banking system, but how we're going to see the potential use case of blockchain and tokenization around the world? Here's an article. JPMorgan pursues tokenization plans despite the crypto downturn and regulatory hurdles. A couple of things I want to highlight here. Let me zoom in on this for you. Major Wall Street investment, JPMorgan, moving forward with this push to tokenize traditional financial assets. And you've heard Jamie Dimon talk about this a lot. But the whole idea is the head of JPMorgan's digital asset says tokenization platform Onyx, bank has, and we've already talked about this before, has already processed close to $700 billion in short-term loans on Onyx. With more to come in the near future, we think tokenization is a killer app for traditional finance. Again, this gets back into what is really afoot here, and that is that the major banking system just needs time to catch up, get into a position where it can compete against the rest of the blockchain world. The question will be speed to market, and the idea of keeping speed to market in a controllable fashion is putting on guardrails, bumper rails. That's the thing that these regulations will start to align with, which of course opens up the opportunity for some of these banks and major corporations to take the lead again. Another further scenario that might play out is how does USDC play into this? Here's USDC succeed. Will they succeed amidst their efforts to revamp? And if you look at what's happening within Circle, let's just give you kind of an example here. Strongest reserve held by USDC, including significant amount in short-term treasury. This is good. Bonds also provide reassurance users get their holdings backed by reliable and secure assets. The problem is that we've started to see great comparison of circulation versus reserves, but we've started to see a lot of the exits inside of what's happening within USDC. This is a good example right here. This is the market cap USDT, and then market cap BUSD. As you can see, right now, Tether still continuing to fly. Both Circle, obviously USDC, and BUSD starting to slowly deteriorate. Now the question will be, could regulation and stablecoin regulation align with what maybe USDC is really set up for, which is creating some sort of CBDC? Now, could that be the conspiracy theory that has been all along discussed, and we've talked about it many times on the show? Is Circle being set up for a central digital dollar? All that could play into this as these frameworks start to be built. The fact that we're seeing so much, I think, speed to market, because I've said this before on the show, is that I think a lot of people, when they looked at regulatory environment, they were thinking, hey, we probably won't even see any of this till after the next election. In fact, now what we're seeing is a lot more activity flowing into this. Just to go to a couple of articles here, I want to jump to this one right here. U.S. House will have crypto bill in 2 months. This is what Representative McHenry said. And this is in reference to the two committees. Remember, we covered one committee last week We went in deep on what that committee was doing, all of the partners and players in it. And then remember, the agricultural panel was doing this almost in unison. So we've got two committees working on similar scenarios. I think you even heard me kind of give Maxine Waters a little bit of a hard time. And the point is that they were starting from scratch. These two committees realigning here. So McHenry says, hey, wait a minute, we've got a lot happening. This happened over at Consensus. When asked whether such bill could be signed by President Biden in the next 12, this is what McHenry said. He says, yeah, the key lawmaker was quick to provide a rider. That's always a challenge, but we think so. We plan to do what we plan to do over the next 2 months is report a deal out. And this is the scenario that's going to play into it, is once the House, most likely going to be the one that really plays into this, of assigning and delivering a bill to the president, it'll be interesting. There was a few points I wanted to hit on here in this last article. President will sign crypto legislation in 12 months. This is both Cynthia Loomis and McHenry. McHenry wasn't at the event, but he was kind of teleported in. This was a couple of the points. Loomis began by clarifying the next installment of her digital asset regulation bill, her bill, responsible for the National Financial Innovation Act, will be presented before the Senate within 6 to 8. Now, very curiously, remember this was done with Kirsten Gillibrand, okay? Areas of the digital asset industry, including classification of cryptocurrencies as either securities or commodities. That's another big one. I don't think that's the one that's going to make it through. Further in this, it says, when asked if any digital assets would be signed by the president, asset legislation would be signed by the president, this is where McHenry came in and said, yeah, I think I'm going to be able to produce a bill out of the House. I'm confident of that. And then Lummis believes the House will be most likely the first to move on this in getting legislation through before the Senate, due to the inability of the bill to pass in the bipartisan basis of the chamber. This means bipartisan subject that needs to be addressed before the 2024 election, meaning most likely the House is going to present something. If they present something, this comes from those two committees, coming out of the Agriculture and the Financial Committee. If they present something that starts to solidify this, and I think that might be the best and greatest hope right now, in terms if you're a pro-legislation person, or if you're just saying, hey, we just need a little bit of guide rails so that we can get off the front pages of all these stupid newspapers, give the banks their little bit of edge, and let's get back to work. That's where I think it all plays into the future of where all of this will play out in terms of the United States, especially when you compare to what's been happening over in Europe at MiCA. So lots to talk about here. I think the scenario right now, and I'd love to get you guys' feedback. We've got a poll up here. Make sure and fill it out there. We'll get to it in a second. But I think the key here is when you look at educating the populace, there's two ways. One, you've got to kind of, learn something and then tell somebody else. And we just did a report earlier today. We'll drop some additional reporting on this, is that there's some additional data out of who is actually recommending and helping people discover crypto. And a lot of it has been friends and family. So this is a great opportunity for you guys to hit the like button right now. That helps the rest of our friends and family on YouTube be able to discover this video and many others like it. In addition, it gets them going down the rabbit hole. They start to understand really what's afoot here around regulatory framework, what the existing industry is really set up to do, the way that Voorhees was talking about. It really kind of opens people's eyes, I think, because the key here, and it has been for quite some time, mainstream media has been artfully doing exactly what they want to do, and that is confuse and discombobulate the American public. And I think now what we're seeing through our show, many others like it, is that we're getting people out there real information. And instead of focusing in on one media story, no, we analyze every clip of every different media story out there that helps you guys put together a much better analysis of how this is going. Let's get into the poll. I think we have a poll coming in, yeah? All right, here we go. Will the House, Senate, and White House pass a crypto regulation bill in 23? Yes, stablecoin only. No, but there will be progress. No, Operation Chokepoint continues. This is a split audience today. Very little on yes. Interesting. So basically about 70% there. Amazing. 70% holding in that we'll get some sort of activity. interesting. We'll see how that goes. A couple of questions in. Flash crash incoming may happen. We're seeing a little bit of down sentiment on Bitcoin and Ethereum right now. If you're in our CPI, we just published our sentiment for the day. Jerry Crosby says JPMorgan now has 10% of the nation's deposits. Remember what I said, centralization. This is all coming, guys. Within a year, 5 banks, 6 banks, real possibility. Circle getting too cozy. Tether for sure. Do you guys use Tether? More so, drop it down in the comments. If you use Tether more than Circle, or what stablecoin do you use? Are you on Paxos? What are you on? Sovereign says, what do you say? They said fight until they figure out how they will get their taste. Yes, that's the key. Crypto Steve says, I think if Congress passes a sensible crypto regulation bill, the president will veto it. That'd be interesting. I don't know, because remember, this would be, that would create a lot of animosity toward the right and the left, I think, to a certain extent. He's going in for a re-election. I don't know. This might not be one. Timing could be very critical here. Plus, it also depends on how it's delivered by the House. For sure. Slugger says, I'm totally against government sticking their nose in regardless of things. I agree, but this is going to happen because the big boys want it to happen. When I say the big boys, banks, they want it to happen. Polls suggest that people don't trust the government. Really? That's new. Oh, surprising. Flatsmack says there's literally nothing you can do or hurt to hurt or help crypto. It is what it is, and the dog and pony shows in the world don't change a thing. Well, to a certain extent, I think you're going to get, it's the perception and how it's perceived. Remember, mass adoption is led by a lot of these kind of scenarios that play out. Regulation would be good, detailed, efficient. Clear regulation would be better. I totally agree. I think that's the best way, is not rushing it in for sure. All right, guys, we're going to get loose and get out of here. But before we leave, don't forget, we're going to be giving away a couple of Bitcoin 2023 tickets. So join the Diamond Circle. Click the link down below. It gets you in for free. You'll get a chance to win one of those tickets. And it's the best place to catch the additional content. And I do a podcast over there, additional content, research, all that stuff, all delivered to the Diamond Circle. So jump in there. If you're not following me on Twitter, just jump out there. It's @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.